The biggest goal for an immigrant family who moves to a new country, it's usually buying a house. It's what settles you. It's like the ultimate goal for an immigrant to get a house. Because getting a house, especially in Italy, especially as a foreigner, is extremely hard. Not usually for the reasons that you might think, which, let's be honest, it happens, okay? There is sometimes racism, but because it's just so hard for you to reach that level of stability that the bank requires you to have to give you the loan. So after my sister married her husband in 2005, she moved with him in Italy. He had been living here already for 15 years maybe, and they had to build their life together. They had to live on rent for a while, and later they finally had saved enough to start the process of buying a house. So can you imagine how weird it was for my sister when her husband one day comes home and it's like, hey honey, I know we bought the house, but how about we move again? Apparently, the boss of the company where my brother-in-law works had this idea of moving them to the house of her late grandma. The grandma had passed away a few years back and the house was empty. The reason behind this was obviously for my brother-in-law to be closer to his place of work. But let's just say that for my sister, the idea of moving everything again was not the best. But if my sister at this point was like, I don't know about it, doesn't seem like a great idea, her response changed into hell no after she saw the house. The house was old, and I don't mean just old meaning that an old style. No, it was old, like just old, falling apart. And I asked my sister this question. I was like, this lady who used to live there, she's from a rich family. How could her kids let her live in those conditions? I've never seen the house before. My sister has, and she describes it as horrible. And apparently it was grandma's wish for the house to stay like that. She never allowed anyone to change anything inside the house while she was alive. And like I said, my sister was not very favorable of moving there until the boss was like, hey, don't worry about it. We're gonna renovate it. And you can pick everything. You can change the house however you want it. And we're gonna pay for it. So my sister was like, well, now the situation has changed. Okay, maybe we can do this. And they started working on the house, and in late 2014, they moved in. And my sister has been living there ever since. And I also stayed there for a while when I moved to Italy with my mom in 2015. Now the situation is a bit trickier, so I'm gonna explain this. My brother was also living with my sister and her family for a few years. He was planning on finding his own place. So when in March 2015, me and my mom came to Italy, the plan was that we would go and live with him. The reason why we moved to Italy was because of my mom's illness. My mom was diagnosed with cancer and she had to do her treatment here. She's fine now. But it was a very hard time in our lives. We moved to Italy in 2015 in March, and we stayed at my sister's house until my brother got his own place in May, like 2 months later. We moved in with him. Yet we didn't move like far away. We moved next door. Now the boss of the company where my brother-in-law worked, her cousin lived next door and she rented part of her house. And that's exactly where we went to live. So basically, I was living with my brother in his house and my sister lives next door. Now, I did move to Italy, meaning that I had my permit done, everything. I started going to school, but my mom couldn't do that. It's just laws in Italy are a bit weird. So my mom had to go back and forth for her treatments. It was a very messy time in my life, seriously. Now, why I said all of this, it was to give you guys a little bit of context on what happens later. Maybe this was also the reason why I had to experience all these paranormal stories, stuff at that time in my life, because I was dealing with so much and I was vulnerable. meaning I was more sensitive to these kind of stuff. And let me just tell you, when I stepped foot on that house, I never imagined that that house could have so many secrets that it took me years to discover. Hi, hello, welcome to my channel. This is mist-Eri-land, the English version of my Albanian channel where I tell true crime stories and paranormal stories. I decided to make an English version just for fun, just because I think some stories need to be told and understood by more people than just my people. I didn't want to limit myself in one language. So this is just an experiment. If you have seen my other videos and you came here because of my Albanian channel, don't worry, these are stories that I already told there, so I don't want to be repetitive. And in this episode, I'm going to continue talking about my paranormal experiences, this time here in Italy, where I've been living ever since I was a teenager. My sister's house is big. It's a two-story house. It also has like a basement, underground, and an attic. The attic is quite important in the story. And I remember this one story that she told me about. Actually, she was telling my mom, and I just happened to be there when she told the story. She told us that usually when her husband isn't home, because her husband has this job that he kind of has to be at his work. My brother-in-law has the type of job that he has to go out with clients a lot because he has to find clients for his company. So he's almost always out. My sister is the opposite of that. She loves staying at home. She loves, just taking care of the kids and everything. And she kind of had to, because it was her husband who had to do this job that it gives more money, but it's also more training, and like you have to kind of give up on your life and the family time. She was telling my mom about this weird thing that happened to her almost every time her husband was eating dinner with clients. So he would be home very late at night. I mean, not very late, but like past midnight. And weirdly enough, this only happened when her husband wasn't home at night. She would be at her room, at her bedroom, and she would hear in the attic this weird sound. It sounded like someone would drop a coin on the floor from the attic, and she could hear it downstairs. And it was extremely realistic. Now, I heard the story and I didn't think much of it. I thought there must be some explanation to it. Actually, at some point, I didn't even believe her until one night I was laying in bed. Now, I was staying in this room that is right next to my sister's bedroom. And it's now her daughter's room, but her daughter wasn't even born yet. So it was kind of like a guest room where me and my mom would sleep. And we used to go to her house a lot. Sometimes we would just sleep there. Sometimes we would stay there until late at night, until her husband came home. And then we would go to our house that was next door, basically. And I was just laying there in this room. It was a small room. It faced the street. And I was just laying there in the dark. I know, it's weird, creepy. But I love to do that sometimes. Sometimes I'm even scared to sleep with lights on. It's weird. It's a feeling. So I was just laying there and I heard it. I heard the coin sound from the attic. And I got up, I turned on the lights, and I was like, okay, there's probably an explanation to all this, like I always do. I always try to find an explanation, which is actually the most logical thing you can do, because not everything is paranormal. But this one is creepy. I called my sister, and my sister, obviously, I thought it was maybe her. Maybe she went to grab something from the attic. And she was actually cooking in the kitchen with my mom. She was downstairs. So I thought maybe it was my nephew. He was around 8 years old at that time. So maybe I was like, he went to grab a toy or something. I called him and he comes out from his room, which was in the same floor. So I was confused and I asked him, were you upstairs in the attic? And he was like, why would I even go there? So it was none of them. And it was certainly not my brother-in-law because he wasn't even home yet. So this was weird, and I remember telling my sister the next day that I heard it, and she was like, see, I told you I'm not crazy. I've heard that sound before too. And the funny thing is that the entire house was renovated except for the attic. The attic was still the same way it used to be when the old lady lived there. I mean, not anymore, they changed it. Now some of you could try and justify it. Obviously, I've thought of this. It could be a cat. Neighbors had cats, but the attic had one window, and that window stayed always closed. And don't dare to say it was a mouse, because my sister will find out who you are and come and kill you. My sister is the most obsessed with cleaning person I've ever seen in my life. I literally could not live with her. Seriously, living with her was a nightmare because she is so obsessed with cleaning. She never had an issue with insects or mouses in her house, and she would be extremely offended if someone even insinuates that. So no, there is no way there is a mouse up there. Also, why would a mouse cause the same sound every time? And why exactly every time her husband wasn't home? So that made me for years believe that something was wrong with her house, and it was kind of proven later. But if you think that my paranormal stories stop here, then you're extremely wrong. Time passed. I started going to school in Italy. I was going through so much mentally, physically, everything. There's a detail that I never mentioned in the other videos. I have a disability. So at this time, I could barely walk. I had to use crutches for 15 years of my life. So let's just say that my life was not easy at all, especially at this moment. So many things had changed. And one thing that I used to do a lot was go to this park near my sister's house, especially during this time. Like going there, I don't know, it kind of helped me feel better, connecting with nature. It was really pretty. The park has a lake in it. It has little animals in it. Not all the animals are friendly. But yeah, like I used to go to this park and I never thought anything was wrong with the park. Actually, I never got bad vibes from it. But something happened once. I used to go there, and again, my obsession with just staying in the dark. I don't know why I do it. That was creepy. I don't know why I do it, but I love sometimes staying in the dark. It's so comforting. I don't know how to explain it. My mom always yells at me every time I do it. I used to love to go to this park and stay there until late, until the sunset, or even after the sunset. And at this time, it was maybe October the same year that I moved to Italy. The sunset would be like around 6 p.m., something like this. And I would just stay there and wait until sunset and wait till the lamps would go off, and that's when I would go home. Because I loved staying there when nobody was there. At that time, everyone was home. I'm very lucky that nothing bad happened to me, because oh my God, everything could have happened. Anyway, one of these nights, I decided to take a selfie. I take the selfie, I move on with my life, and then months later, I realized that there's something wrong with the background of the selfie. Very weird thing. There is a face if you zoom in the background. This was the first one that I noticed, but some other people told me about other faces that they were noticing in the background. I took the picture and I showed it to some of my classmates. Actually, I showed it to my family first. My mom, like always, was like, this is not true, it's just your imagination. She loves to dismiss paranormal stuff. I don't know why she does it. My sister was extremely scared, and my classmates were like, that's just pareidolia. Don't worry about it. It's just your brain trying to find like things that are similar to faces. It's normal. I was dismissed a lot of times. A lot of times people told me it's just your imagination, it's not true, even though I had a picture that proved it. And for years, it was eating me inside, not knowing if there was actually some paranormal activity in that park. I don't know, something told me that something happened in that park, but I couldn't find any information at all. I even made a video in Italian, and I was like, since young people don't know about this, maybe older people will know. So I found a Facebook group with people from this area where I live in, and posted the video, and I got in trouble. They're like, oh, why are you trying to make it seem like the park is a scary place? You're trying to scare people away. And I was like, no, I just want answers. Tell me if you know if anything ever happened here. Anyways, for years, I was dismissed. I almost forgot about it. There was a time where I was like, maybe it wasn't even true. Maybe they're right. It was my imagination. Until 2021. Because of my disability, I had to do two surgeries in my legs. And the first one was done in 2021. After the surgery, you have to lay down and not be able to move for months. And that's apparently very dangerous. So you have to take these shots, like with a syringe in, it was either in your arm or your belly, but I'm terrified of it. And while I was at the hospital, it was fine because they were doing it for me. But when I came home, there was no one that could do it for me. And getting a nurse to do that was extremely expensive because they're private nurses. Because I don't know why this is not covered from the health insurance or something. Probably because almost everyone knows how to do these shots at home. Like, these are not the syringe was like this small, okay guys? I was probably exaggerating. I was just very scared to do it alone. So my sister decided to call the landlord, the cousin of the boss of the company that I told you before, the same lady that rented us the apartment, that lived next door to my sister. This lady was cousins with the boss of the company, and also she had been living in that house for all her life basically. And she was like, yeah, sure, I will do that for you. So every night she would come to my sister's house and help me with the shots. And she would sometimes stay there for a few minutes to chat with me. And one night I was like, hey, so do you believe in this paranormal stuff? And she was like, well, here's the thing. I try not to because I heard some creepy stories and I was terrified and I don't want to believe that they're true. But I've heard stories from my grandma. This is what the landlord told me one night. I was like, well, here's the thing. I've taken this picture a few years back. I told her about the picture. I showed her the picture, and I asked her, since she has been living in this area her entire life, if she knows anything bad happening in the area. And she actually told me that when she was younger, she heard about a boy drowning in the lake. So technically, I was right. Something did happen. Again, I'm not saying I got bad vibes from the lake or the park. I still go there sometimes. It really hurt me that for years people were so eager to dismiss it and be like, that's not true, that's not true. Because like, apparently it was true something. I don't know if the face that shows up in the background of my picture was the soul, the spirit of the boy that drowned it. I don't know that, but apparently something is around there. But she didn't stop there. We talked about that, and we talked about other paranormal stories, because I was like, what do you mean you heard stories? Like, what other stories did you hear? And she told me a lot. And this might also explain what had happened in my sister's house. Apparently this story was told to her by her grandmother. So this was like a very old story. Both her house that she owned and the house that my sister owns are right next to each other, and it was technically her family that owned it. Like, her great-grandparents owned both houses. So she basically grew up in her house, but she used to go to my sister's house all the time. It was her family, her uncle's house. And apparently back in the day, it was really popular to have parties and do like spiritual stuff during those parties. And I was like, what do you mean spiritual stuff? And she was like spiritual callings, like, I don't know, like rituals, stuff to connect with the paranormal. And people used to do this for fun back in the day. And I was like, oh, interesting. Where though? Where were they doing these parties? And she said, well, here as well, in your sister's house, the same house that your sister lives in, they used to do these parties. I was like, huh, well, that kind of explains so much. But like, go on, tell me more. And apparently these parties were very frequent. Trust me, in my mind, I was like already imagining, you know, the scene in Eyes Wide Shut, the scene of the ritual, that the same thing. I was like, they did the same thing, probably. And apparently they stopped because something creepy started happening. Her uncle, the landlord's uncle, was born, and his mom found her son as a baby floating in the air. And she was scared, and she went to the priest, and the priest told her, "Did you do anything wrong?" And she told him about the parties, and he told her that they need to stop immediately, because like that was probably the reason why her son was, you know, floating around. And apparently this is when they stopped. But the uncle grew up to be a person with paranormal powers. And she told me this is not like a saint type of, you know, like a saint that makes miracles. He had the power to heal people. Like if you had like a wound in your hand, he would just pass his hand through it and the wound would be healed completely. But he wasn't like a good person. This is what she said, because it wasn't like he had these powers because he was such a nice person. Like no, he wasn't. Like maybe she has some beef with her uncle, I don't know, but like she insisted that this was not a good person. He didn't have these powers because he was a good person. He had these powers probably because the family did something messed up back in the day. And I was not really believing this story until she mentioned something. She mentioned that her uncle's case was actually studied by an academy in Bologna, which apparently actually existed. She told me the name. I looked up the name on the internet, and there was an actual academy where professors and people who went to school, we're not talking about conspiracy theorists here, people who went to school and were smart were actually studying cases of paranormal activity. And she told me her uncle was studied by them, and they told the uncle to stop using his powers because his powers were real and they could get very dangerous and get out of control. So this is why he stopped using his powers for good, but he had the powers. I had no idea that something like this happened in this house. That's creepy, and but kind of proves that we were not crazy, okay? Something had happened, and whatever it is that passed through those portals during those parties maybe forgot to leave, or maybe is still lingering around the house. God, that's so scary. Her house, and she came into the room almost crying, telling me that she had a dream that I was in her room and I told her they're here and they have killed everybody. It would have happened if someone was downstairs pressing those buttons, but no one was downstairs. And the device started lighting, the screen started, you know, being lit out of nowhere. There was no like indication of something being wrong with panels. It would just turn on and off.